Greetings. It is Monday, March the 17th, 2025. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, right now, the U.S. Navy is bombing Yemen, specifically the Houthis that run that little country or excuse thereof. The U.S. aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman was supposedly attacked, or at least the battle group that was attached to it, by drones that were sent from Yemen. No reported damage. Everything was shot down. You know, American military hardware is the best money can buy, and it tends to work. The Houthis, who are backed by Iran, those guys, they're saying they're not going to permit any ships going up into the Red Sea, thus getting into the Suez Canal, and if they're American ships, they're going to attack them. Yeah, right. Folks, this is the reason we have a Navy, officially, is to basically blow the hell out of anyone that threatens shipping, international commerce. No matter what you think of what's going on in Israel and Gaza or what have you, there's no excuse for this. So what do? You bomb them. You blow them up. You kill them. It's the way it goes. You attack shipping of another nation, they have every right to defend that shipping or international seaways. So stop wringing your hands over this one. This is what the Navy's designed for, and boy, are they having fun. Of course, Russia doesn't like it. Nobody else likes it. They're used to the U.S. just rolling over and playing dead or being beaten up like the ugly little kid on the playground. Well, that's not happening anymore. Yemen is going to be blown to little pieces, and, I'm not sending flowers. Sorry. You shouldn't attack people's shipping, no matter what the political reasons behind it. It's a no-no. The other thing that needs to be pointed out is the Suez Canal is not as critical as people think it is. For several years, from 1967 until the early 70s, it was closed. And ships back then were much smaller and had much shorter ranges, and we got along just fine. So if that whole part of the world gets shut down, we will survive. The U.S. does have plenty of petroleum. We've just been very clever about not using all of it. That's an interesting thing to check into, all the capped wells that the United States has in its territory. So, good hunting, men of the Harry S. Truman and all the other people out there from Central Command. Knock yourselves out. We finally have something useful to do with our military. Get rid of those rather despicable people that think it's okay to shoot at merchant ships because they don't agree with certain political viewpoints. And speaking of silliness, a French lawmaker, notice I'm saying that in a singular term, wants to take back the Statue of Liberty. This is a story that's getting far too much airplay. And you would think that, well, obviously it's the end of the relationship between France and the United States. This is somebody named Raphael Gluckman. That's the name. And it seems that, according to this fellow, we don't live up to his standards of freedom and democracy, so we have to disassemble the Statue of Liberty, put it on a ship, and send it back to France. Right. He also thinks, get this, that all the bureaucrats losing their jobs in Washington under the Trump administration should migrate to France and be hired by their government. I'm not joking. You can't make this up. I don't know how many people in the U.S. government losing their jobs speak French. That would probably be a little bit of a problem. But, well, let's just say this, that the French are very French. It's a European race that seems to swing from being the most highly civilized to being totally mad. And very seldom do you find them in the center. But again, this is one guy talking trash. Why should he be listened to? But I'll tell you what, sir, if we don't meet your standards, If that's the case, Mr. Gluckman, perhaps you should arrange the compensation of all the families of the 10,481 American servicemen who are buried in Lorraine American Cemetery in your country. Yeah, you know, those are the ones who died liberating France and much of Europe during World War II. It's our largest foreign cemetery on French soil. All those young men who never saw their homes or their families again because they went off to fight your enemies. You seem to have forgotten them, haven't you? No biggie, most of Europe has. Speaking of stupid, the Tesla automobiles and dealerships that continue to be the target of left-wing vandalism and outright assault continues. Again, Mr. Trump's Tesla electric automobiles were all the rage of all the environmentally conscious Americans and activists around the world, but because he's been out trying to make the U.S. government more efficient and cut off all these insane programs, people are taking it out on his cars, dealerships, charging stations. Hey, I think the Cybertruck looks ugly too, but I wouldn't be spray painting swastikas on it. You see, none of this makes any sense except for one reason. These are organized attacks, and they're paid for by the deep state, New World Order, whatever you want to call it. Do you really think all of these, well, unemployed, liberal, left-wing people are suddenly going to be offended by Teslas? There's one case where a man actually shot up a dealership after hours, thankfully, with a rifle. Firebombs, vandalism, people being pressured to sell their Teslas. Well, who's going to buy it? How does that affect anything? This is insanity. And it's organized insanity. This is not some grassroots movement of people that suddenly are feeling very cuddly towards all these agencies like the IRS and the FBI that are being cut back and investigated and shaken out. If you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. So far, nobody has been hurt seriously. There's been a few fistfights here and there. Nobody's been killed, thankfully. But let me just point out something. The right to self-defense is a human right. And if you are in an automobile and someone comes at your automobile with a weapon, I hope you're armed. And you know what? Take them down. 2 to the torso, 1 or 2 to the head. If someone comes at my car, and I don't drive a Tesla, mine is good old-fashioned gasoline, but if someone came at my automobile and one of my loved ones or more is in that vehicle, I will draw a firearm and I will take action to defend myself. Do not mess around with people in cars, you lefty loonies out there. You're going to get killed. And justifiably so, because when you attack someone with a weapon, you are putting their lives in danger, and in this country, you do have the right to defend yourself with deadly force. How that'll be handled by the courts is another problem, but stop this. This is nuts. You're being paid, you're being organized by people who don't care about you. They just are using you as tools. Hope that calms down soon, because otherwise people are going to be badly hurt or killed. But if you're driving a vehicle and someone comes at you with a weapon, you have every right to defend yourself, and don't think otherwise. That's not legal advice, by the way. That's just human advice. In other news, storms hitting the United States, tornadoes and high winds, 32 people killed over the past couple of days. No, don't blame this on climate change. This is typical weather in this country. Look to historic records, especially this time of year. High winds, dust storms we've had before. This is not unusual. Tornadoes are a big problem in the Midwest. I mean, everyone out there has storm cellars. Anybody ever see the movie Wizard of Oz? I mean, they've had tornadoes since the Midwest has been the Midwest. Even before there were people out there, when the buffalo were running around, they had tornadoes. Tornadoes, by the way, are caused by the tail end of a fast-moving thunderstorm. Cold air from above, warm air from below. If you pull it fast enough, it sets off a twister. It's a unique phenomena to that part of the world more than others. Just stop it, please. Stop being silly. Not everything is related to global warming, just like not every cockroach is marching under orders from some central command. Hunter Biden, yeah, I thought we'd heard the last of him, but no, he's claiming he was broke. He convinced a judge to allow him to drop a lawsuit pertaining to his infamous laptop. All the money your family has grifted is gone? Yeah, right, okay. That's why he fled to South Africa with his Secret Service protection detail over the last couple of days. Taking a vacation there. I guess he won't be able to do that deposition that was scheduled in California, Mr. Biden, will you? His is going to be an interesting life to follow and see where it goes for sure. Now, speaking of such things, the Russia-Ukrainian war seems to be inching towards an end. Inching. It's not going as quickly as people would think. For some reason, the Europeans think Mr. Zelensky is some sort of a hero. He is not. He is a coke-tooting criminal and has bad taste and bad manners to boot. A very strange situation, but eventually Trump and Vladimir Putin will be coming to some sort of arrangement to end this. From the Russian perspective, the United States is responsible for this big mess because the U.S. were the people who were backing Ukraine, giving them weapons, giving them money, giving them intelligence reports. This war would have been over very quickly, and Russia would have taken the territory it wanted to take. Again, if you look at the history of this, it's been going on not just since 2014, but since 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. Hopefully, we will put this sad, tragic, bloody mess behind us in the near future. Look for something to happen probably within the next week. Serbia. All these protests in Serbia, they're giving the numbers of anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 to 250,000 people protesting the Serbian government? Why? They're blaming it on some accident at a train station, I read someplace. There have been some reports out on various news sources I've been reading this morning that the Soros people, oh yes, George Soros, remember him? And USAID money got into the pockets of a lot of these groups that are protesting. It'll be interesting to see how true that is. It's believable, to be sure. This is not spontaneous. You don't have protests that large that are spontaneous. It doesn't happen. They're organized. The people there are not necessarily being paid, but it's like locusts. It's one thing to be a grasshopper, but if you get enough of them together, they become a locust swarm, and that's what you're seeing. That's Sociology 101. Now, I'm going to be closing out today on a bit of a personal story that pertains to DOGE and the cutbacks at the federal level. And this is about an organization I have had some dealings with and worked for as a contractor, and that's Voice of America. And it has now apparently officially, come to an end. If you go up on Wikipedia, it is no longer an is, it is now a was. Apparently it has formally been shut down, at least effectively shut down over the weekend. As of Sunday, March the 16th, 2025, Voice of America is no more. Their website hasn't been updated in a couple of days, and it's not as detailed as it was. I haven't checked it out in some time, but it was much more elaborate, as I remember. Voice of America was a product of the Cold War. It began in the 1940s, right after the end of World War II. It's a sad thing to see it go, but it was inevitable. First off, it is more of a casualty of what has gone on in journalism in general in the United States. I have worked for that organization. I worked for them in the Far East as an independent stringer, as we call it, for many years. And we did some damn good work at that time. When I returned to the United States, one of my first jobs was working as a contractor at Voice of America's newsroom in Washington, D.C. It was good. I had hoped to get a position in that organization covering the Far East or being the Far East editor. That didn't happen, unfortunately. But maybe it's a good thing it didn't, because I'd be looking for a job right about now after having been employed by the federal government for so long. But let me tell you about Voice of America. It had far more good going for it for most of its history than is being credited now. When I was traveling in Tanzania in 1991, I was there, as it happened, just when the coup was occurring in Moscow, when Mikhail Gorbachev was overthrown. And even though it might not seem that way now, we were pretty worried there would be a World War III over that. While I was out on the plains of Africa, I listened to them very attentively, maybe more than I should have, because it was a good source of news and information, reliable. The Voice of the United States. Of course, there'd be certain segments that would come on of this is an opinion of the United States. The rest of the time, they gave us information. This was shortwave, by the way. This is before the Internet. Before the Internet, you lived overseas, you wanted good, solid, reliable information, you listened to shortwave stations. Voice of America and BBC were the two that had the strongest signals and had the best news coverage. It's not generally known, but one of the major contributors to the downfall of the Soviet Union was not so much Ronald Reagan spending them into the dirt. It was a show called Jazz Hour. Voice of America, once a week, they had a show called Jazz Hour. They just played jazz music. And believe it or not, jazz music has a massive following on planet Earth. People all over the planet, especially in the Soviet Union, used to tune in religiously and listen to Jazz Hour. People sitting on yaks in the Himalayas listen to Jazz Hour. All over, they listen to Jazz Hour. It's very hard to hate people when they're coming up with music that you really like. It wasn't until I became an expatriate and got to travel as much as I did that I didn't realize exactly how much non-Americans love American jazz. That little show contributed more to the demise of the evil empire known as the Soviet Union than a lot of people give it credit for. It's sad to see this go, but again, Voice of America had to use news sources from mainstream media. So if Associated Press, Reuters, and MSNBC or something like that came out with a story, they would report it. It's more of a victim of circumstances than anything else. They did have very good programs on learning American English or understanding American culture, at least back in the day. Again, I haven't heard them in many years on shortwave, and I don't even think they were broadcasting on shortwave anymore. Well, for good or for ill, it's now gone. The U.S. doesn't have an official news source anymore. There's so much bad news gathering and bad reporting out there that was inevitable that the Trump administration and Mr. Trump has been on the receiving end of real fake news, and that does exist. It was only inevitable that this would be done in. It's a sad passing because, one, I worked for that organization and had some very good times there and did some very good work. And two, I got to see the history fighting the Soviet Union back in the day, not directly, but indirectly. And it was a very powerful weapon for the cause of good. It'll be missed. But then again, journalism itself doesn't exist in many places anymore. And until that changes, well, we're going to continue down into the abyss that we seem to have set ourselves on the course to enter. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends. Share with your enemies. Try to make them friends. It makes the world a better place. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates on Substack. The address there is AurelianColumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember Clown World and the Deep State must be destroyed. Good day.